Exceptional Radio.
Hey, good afternoon. It's Sunday, and it's time for another edition of Exceptional Randos. We've got flooding in Las Vegas. Like, not just flooding, but rivers sweeping the city clean. Burning Man is a mud pit, which is to be expected when it floods because it's a lake bed. Well, that was random. I don't think it was random anymore. I think all this stuff is just the weather now. If a modern megalopolis or metropolis like Las Vegas can flood and just it looked just like the scenes of rivers forming in China or in was it Pakistan or in Europe. Like it just looked like the craziest. Like, this stuff shouldn't happen in a modern society. There's supposed to be like adequate drainage and all that stuff, and here we are. Like, there was nothing to distinguish the scene from another country flooding. That's what I mean. It just looked like a modern state getting swept away. Cars, chairs, trees. It's nuts.
I don't know how much you've gotten into cyberpunk, but one of the things about it is the erasure of the state and the rise of like the mega city. Oh, and yeah. To me, like, those types of flooding events are exactly why that scenario just really can't play out.
Oh, I was just thinking about that. Like, no, straight up. Like, if the state can't prevent flooding, what chance does organized crime have against flooding? I mean,
oh god,
like, straight up, the CCP can't stop flooding. That's like the most organized group of, well, individuals acting out on their own best interests, whatever. But like, they can't stop flooding. How are some mafia dudes going to stop flooding in Vegas?
And I don't even know if it's so much as like nobody can stop it. It's what can you do to recover from it, and that's the difference between a functional state / country and anarchy. And I think that's where you look at places where anarchy has actually happened to the closest degree, and they just have no response to anything really that's not sort of like thrown together. And I think that's ultimately where our government's roles really should only be playing in. But for whatever reason, I think there's a few reasons, but beyond like natural disasters, one of the main reasons is the boomers don't take natural disasters seriously, and obviously that's why they're not acknowledging climate change, or that if they acknowledge it, they don't treat it as if it's like an actual problem. And then further, those people look at it as like divine retribution for like gay people existing or stupid shit like that. So like they only apply that thought when it like aligns with their ridiculous dogmas. But if they were consistent about it, it would be obviously like, oh, your Abrahamic God is not happy with military industrial complex. Clearly, like, that would be the most obvious logical like conclusion one would make anytime these natural disasters are happening. Mainly that it's funny in that when you look at the availability of data, it's like,
wait, did you just threaten some individual's God-given four-wheel drive and God-given guns?
Well, I didn't do it, but their exposure bias made them feel like that's what I was saying, because we're not going to notice the natural disasters when they don't hit humans. And that's kind of where, like, you know, I think the scientists are aware when some shit floods where it's not supposed to be flooding, but the regular person just doesn't give a fuck to the extent of like not only not paying attention, if it happens, it's an isolated incident and not part of an ecosystem. And I
Except
think
this,
that's
but
where.
but Vegas flooded twice in like the last week and a half. And it rained so hard in at La Playa for Burning Man that the lake bed itself is resurrected as a silt pit. Like people are walking around with so much goop caked on their feet that they look like they have Mickey Mouse boots. It's actually quite incredible. Like I've seen pictures of Burning Man where there's like a gentle shower and everyone is delighted by the cooling mist action or whatever. But this is like that lake bed is a lake bed again, essentially. There like are countless RVs are trapped in mud that they're not equipped to get out of. And so it's not like this kind of event obviously happens in places where people don't normally go, except for once a year. Apparently, people like to go out to the middle of nowhere, and it just happened to be, flood season in this moment. So we're actually getting to see it happen, you know, in the places that go unnoticed at the same time that it's happening in a place that everyone's like got all eyes on. Another thing that occurred to me is in Vegas. Apparently, there's like there have been news stories over the years about the people that live under the road system, like in tunnel systems, and
Yeah, that's a weird one.
yeah, like they're like groups of people that live under the surface, and I'm pretty sure that they're not being tallied in the two people that apparently were swept away in the water because they don't know about those people don't officially exist or something. Like, how can you keep track of people that are like not on radar? It's pretty catastrophic. Like, cities aren't supposed to have this kind of situation. Like when New York flooded because of a hurricane. Well, yeah, that makes sense. There's a freaking hurricane and it's a coastal city, but Las Vegas is landlocked. They have to pump water in there to make it function.
Well, and that's where I feel like we learn the exact, not we, but the people who lean on the Bible learned all the wrong lessons in that it's like Noah's Ark seems to be a story about preparedness for flooding and natural disasters, but if you like get wrapped up in the minutia of the individual story, then they're like, "Oh, this dude was like blessed by God and God told him this flood was going to happen and nobody paid." Well, that's what disaster prep is about. Like it shouldn't have to go to that level every single time. Um,
like like
but
like
ultimately,
anyone
that
who
was
believes
he was
that.
like the first doomsday prepper.
Yeah, but like anyone's gonna listen to that person now. If there was a modern day Noah
Right.
and they're like, guys, we got to do
No.
everything. The world's about to flood. We've got 40, or it's going to flood for 40 days. It's going to cover the entire earth. Seriously, we got to get a boat and a whole bunch of animals and some food. Like a lot of, we all need to do this. Everyone would think that person was insane. They'd be like, bro,
I
chill.
mean, not not before 2012 they wouldn't have. They would have listened to that person and given them a podcast that reached 100 million people and been like, "Oh, this guy knows everything. He's exactly right about December 21st, 2012.
Oh
I'm
man.
going to stock up a bunch of fucking canned goods and guns and ammo because this dumb
Holy
idiot
shit.
says that this shit's about to happen." And that's what people were doing before 2012, and then 2012 happened and they kind of snapped out of it and then acted like that shit never happened.
Okay, there are several podcasts about Noah's Ark, but I'm not seeing any like social commentary themed survivalist culture podcasts. It's all history and well, yeah, it's all historical perspective and
Yeah, because everybody's
literary
taking that shit
analysis.
too literal.
But nobody's doing a Noah's Ark podcast about survivalist stuff. I think this is like a gap in the market we just identified.
So the show hasn't started on YouTube for whatever reason.
Oh, Well, weird. It says it's streaming on this thing.
I guess that you can hear it, but the screensavers stuff.
Oh, ha. Yeah, it is stuck.
This is just like capitalism in terms of like, I feel like that's what's frustrating me more than anything about capitalism is that shit just never works the way it's supposed to. And it feels more like if shit worked when you bought it, I wouldn't be so upset, but nothing ever fucking works. And it's just a matter of like, can we continue to call that capitalism if it's about it's it's effectively some weird sort of grift when people are like selling things that they know aren't going to work or that they have no intention of doing. Because it's like Elizabeth Holmes, like that's not capitalism. If her product never actually worked and she's just going in and like selling these blood sampling kits and they never actually worked, I feel like it I have more respect for capitalism than that person in terms of like, at least shit's supposed to work if you're gonna call it capitalism because that's like I said, that's
Well, I am using an open source uh, OBS, so maybe I need to update it.
but
Man,
open
long.
source exists in contrast or in juxtaposition to capitalism.
Yeah.
Like the only reason open source exists is as a statement to
Oh, I
capitalism.
know, but I mean,
Or
it
as
could be that like my
anti-capitalist.
practice
So
of not updating all the time is finally run
I
into
doubt the paid shit's gonna work either. You
yeah.
know what I mean? No,
No, I mean,
like,
I think I might just be like a few revision updates like behind, and it might just be the software.
mm,
It could be what I'm saying is it might be my lax update policies, which is essentially to ignore updates because I have a stable system until I don't. You know, there was a long time where I wouldn't update Windows for months. Like, I might not update it for 6 to 9 months. I might take a year to update it because I would have a stable platform and I didn't want to mess with it.
yeah, you can't do that shit
Now you
anymore
have to update like every week practically. If
because of
you,
the. Sorry, go ahead.
oh no, it's not it's not the version of computing that makes the most sense to me. But I guess that's the nature of having to deal with a bunch of bad actors with malicious intent.
Yeah, it's pretty frustrating in terms of a lot of times the updates that they'll push if you don't update your shit just not gonna work. And it's like .NET updates or like
Oh man, .NET updates just ruined my all-in-one. It
yeah,
doesn't
there
want to
you
go
go.
online anymore, and a whole slew of software that was running on it just fine refused to work afterwards. Having audio issues, having like video output issues, and it's an all-in-one. It's basically a laptop. They're almost always rock solid. The only time I've ever experienced problems with all-in-one computers is when they get old and the thermal paste starts to dry out.
Mm,
That's crack the case and put some new paste.
yeah.
But I have more issues updating .NET than anything. I don't know why. I'm not running a bunch of applications on it. I'm running like a lightweight just build. I think there's maybe 20 applications on there that get used regularly, and of those, it's probably more like 6 or 7 that get used regularly. So that shouldn't cause big issues. I don't have a database running on that computer. In fact, the only computer that I have that runs a database isn't even online right now, and hasn't been for months. So And by that I mean like a big database, not like a tiny one associated with a simple application, but I mean a real let's keep track of information and collect and generate new information database.
Well, it's really easy to not keep information locally anymore because cloud storage is so easily
Mm.
accessible. But then as soon as internet goes out, it's like a reminder as to why you have to keep shit locally. And then it's like I I'm starting to wonder if like we're hitting the peak cloud usage and peak like third party um like tool API implementation at corporate scale because there's too much control ceded to those types of tools. And then when they fail, it's like you may have an entire platform that is like
Junk.
down because of one of their third party tools that they employed.
Or
So I'm
like they end up loaded up with junk data that doesn't mean a damn thing. That's just taking up space and API calls require resources. Like useless shit happening in the background impedes the actual flow of data, like necessary data transactions. I think you're right. I think that there's got to be we're probably hitting some kind of like information generation collection uh, representation bottleneck where if everyone's generating data and most of it's telemetry, like really like it's just telemetry, it's what someone's doing at this time, where did they go, how long were they there, like none of that stuff's actually that important. If the algorithms that determined what to market to me were accurate based on my locations, then I'd be getting a lot more for like Rural King and Menards, building stuff, things like that. But that's not what I see on my YouTube. That's not the kind of, you know, smart ad delivery that Chrome gives me. There's still, for whatever reason, Facebook thinks I'm interested in women's clothes, which is really fucked up. I have no interest in used women's clothing, by the way. That's just like the weirdest cross marketing. I'm not sure what they think is going on, but
so how often I'm wondering like what Facebook's user base is like anymore in terms of like does it seem like they're losing people because
oh, I don't know because I ran a Python script that unfollowed and unliked everything, and I had to
well
so and and so I don't see a lot of things that are tailored for me because my interaction is almost entirely searching on Marketplace. So they don't really know what to send me, and I'm not sure if Facebook Messenger is listening closely enough to what's going on to know what to market to me. I don't know. See, I don't think the algorithms are working anymore. I think they've gotten to this place where there are outlier computer users who the algorithm just doesn't know how to market things to yet. And by algorithm, I mean the algorithmic intelligence that's being applied to all this stuff. Because I don't know if you've noticed YouTube, if you it'll show you things that you have expressed interest in before, like stuff that you've watched, stuff that you've liked, things that you subscribe to. But if you scroll all the way down, you'll get to a point where it runs out of things that it knows that you like, and it'll start suggesting things like, oh, I don't know, let's see, hold on, let me get down to the bottom of it. It thinks I'm interested in Minecraft. It thinks that I want to know what's going on with teenage gamers. It thinks I want to know about. Actually, I do kind of want to know about modern pop music because that stuff's still pretty interesting to me, to some extent. But I don't care about teenagers playing Overwatch or Fortnite, or what's another one that's big and free and
That feels like it's just actually throwing the most popular stuff at you, and it's not actually taking into account.
it is. I think that's what's going on because oh, it's being really good now. Maybe it's listening. It knows that I'm complaining about it. Oh, here we go. Um, I don't care about somebody who's buying banned kids' toys. I don't care about how someone survived 100 days of Speakerman in hardcore Minecraft. I don't even care about the origin of Speakerman or what Speakerman is. I'm not interested in. Oh man. Okay, so I have no interest in professional squash.
Like
I,
the game?
yeah, I'm willing to wager that most people on Earth don't know what squash is. If I were to say, yeah, I was playing around a squash, they'd probably look at me like, wait, what with the plant, the vegetable we eat? And I'd say, no, the game. It has a racket and a ball. Yeah, it recommended me squash. Uh,
Squash hasn't been popular for years. That shit had its popularity in like 96, maybe 95. And
it,
then it was like Hyla had this fucking
highlight.
brief resurgence, and then people realized how fucking expensive that shit is, and they're like,
Dude,
okay, I'm not gonna play that
did
game.
you ever encounter Highlight Guy on the internet? Like, it wasn't an actual personality. It was a personality, not an actual person or avatar or screen name. But there was always this like Highlight Guy during that period of time who was like, "Oh man, highlight this, highlight that. You can solve all your problems with highlight. It's like the most aggressive and fast-paced game. People died playing it." It was like, what? And then of course like I went to look up like wait what is highlight and then it's like that hook shaped thing with the ball. People wear helmets. There's only two walls. Apparently people do have died in that because they've gotten hit in the face by that ball. And it's really it was only really popular in like Florida.
I mean, similar shit happened with baseball.
Yeah,
Um, in terms of like, when we were out golfing, if anybody had hit somebody in the head with one of those golf balls, it could be instant out of this universe real quick. And it's like, you know, I think people take that shit for granted, but there was a few incidents of like people getting hit in the chest with baseballs from like line drives right
yeah.
in between their heartbeat, and it just killed them instantly. And it's like, I think, a couple of them were kids, and when that happened, it became like, I think that's when they started making kids wear helmets more during like little league, because they didn't used to have to wear um like batting helmets in little league, because they weren't really throwing them fast enough for people necessarily need a batting helmet. But then after a while, it just became like, okay, why would we even risk not having this safety precaution when there's just, freak shit happens? And I think when freak shit started happening, I mean, it only takes like a couple times. It didn't, um, the frequency of that thing happening, it's probably extremely low, but once is enough for people to start taking it seriously. And I think that's where, like, it's almost like with the fucking shoe bomber, if it happens once, people take it more seriously than shit like car accidents that happen constantly every day. Even though everybody's way more at risk of getting into a car accident than encountering a fucking shoe bomber that
So
actually works.
it's called commotio cordis. It's blunt trauma induced cardiac arrest. It's happened to football players. but it's mostly seems to be baseball. It happened in 2023, 2022, 2020, 2015, 2012. The guy was hit in the head with a no. He
Oh
got hit in the
damn.
chest and then he ended up with brain damage because good golly.
It's the most common cause of death in youth baseball. It's
Oh,
2 to 3 deaths each year. That's crazy.
oh man, there shouldn't be a common cause of death in youth baseball.
No. Wow. I didn't see. I knew when it started happening because they would blame it on shit like metal bats, or the speed of the ball coming off the bat is obviously higher off of a metal one that's like made out of titanium or some shit.
Or
That's
some ceramic metal matrix. And a lot of the really fancy ones
right.
are like some kind of polymer ceramic metal bats, like for softball, because no one wants to
Especially if
swing
it's
a.
hollow.
Oh yeah, no one wants to swing a giant softball bat that weighs as much as a solid piece of hickory or whatever, of walnut or whatever they use anymore. I don't know what they make baseball bats out of, maple, but still, that's heavy. I think big ups to baseball players, pro baseball players who swing a wooden bat. That's just nuts to me.
Well, and I guess, I just don't stay up with like sports in general that's not martial arts. Um, but I guess the the fact that sports become more serious probably has increased this type of shit across all sports in terms of I remember, like the wrestling shit where people would like wear trash bags when they're cutting weight. That's the idea of a kid wearing a trash bag to cut weight before they're 18 years old is so fucking insane to me now as an adult. But as a kid, it was so common where you're like, oh, this is just, oh, they're just cutting weight again. It's like, that's what they did. But there was I think it was in Michigan where a kid died. I think it was a high school kid first, and then it started happening like damn near across the country, like all at once, where it wasn't like two or three, it was like a
28.
significant amount to the point they had to ban.
There have been 28 three high school related deaths in wrestling related to weight loss. It's the most common reason high school wrestlers die is they try to make weight. They suffer kidney failure and heart malfunction. Their organs just start shutting down. They try to make weight. It's still fewer than the amount of kids who die from baseball, but I bet there are more people who play baseball than engage in high school wrestling.
So it was 1997 when there was like the first three that it was like it was like some weird domino effect in terms of it was almost like because these people died doing this weight cut, they're like, oh, well, the weight cut must work. So people started doing it more.
Mm.
And it just spread so quickly. That's why they had to make a rule about it in terms of um I was wrestling. It was middle school at the time, but it was like 90, I want to say 95 or 6. I think it was 6 when I started, and then 7 when that shit started happening,
Yeah, they
and
suffer
then
severe dehydration. Their kidneys function start like goes haywire. Their liver starts doing weird shit. Their hearts enlarge.
yeah, and it's like
Then because they can't cool themselves off properly, their brain function starts to deteriorate. Holy crap, this is like a terrible, terrible thing. It destroys the immune system.
well, and this is before what's it called? Like the CrossFit people started getting rhabdo in like insane numbers. That's before that shit. So people really didn't know what rhabdomyolysis was. So it's like that that notion of your muscles eating themselves and then starting to eat your organs, it wasn't really like they thought they were just like losing water weight. And they didn't the kids didn't know what was happening because the adults didn't know what was happening. Like the understanding wasn't that good at the time, and it's come a long way since. But it's things like this that happened that cause people to understand, like, oh, there is like a limit on the body before you start having like heat strokes and shit. In terms of like, it seemed obvious before, but a young, healthy high school, college age kid having a fucking heat stroke isn't.
And when I
You
was
wouldn't
in,
think it would be possible, but the extremes they were putting themselves through, it'd be like, these garbage bags, but riding a bike in a shower. So it's like, they not only have the bags on, but they'd be riding a fucking stationary bike in like the shower where it's got all the showers turned on. So it's basically like a sauna. It's
and
like a
when I was a
sauna
Boy
inside a
Scout,
sauna.
and we went on these like long ass hikes in the summer, we carried a lot of water and we took a lot of breaks because we were already in a place where if something goes wrong, it's not good. It's like extra not good being out in the middle of nowhere if something happens. But to intentionally induce the conditions where one could suffer heat stroke or heat exhaustion and then try to function through that, like I, that's like that's self
And then
harm,
go compete
and then go
after
compete
that.
afterwards and call it training. That's like I'm pretty sure that's kind of, well, if the fucking coach said do these things, then it's definitely abuse. If they're doing it on their own, then they're just making terrible decisions. If the coach didn't stop him, then the coach was just not paying attention or was okay with it, which is facilitating a scenario where these kids can harm themselves. This shit's fucked up. That's just wrong. I mean, is it that important to win that it's okay to let students do dumb shit to themselves all of a sudden? I guess this is in the
It was
past.
for a
It was
while.
for a while. Well, they haven't been doing it for a while, so that's good.
And then you do find out a lot of the coaches that were recommending that type of shit were like, you know, high school successes, but didn't make it to the pros. So they were trying to like push the kids to the extreme that they thought was going to be the difference. Um, and in some cases, it's like, yeah, it may have worked out in a couple cases, but I don't think that type of thing actually pays off.
2016 was the last time that it looks like that was the last time that it happened.
Well, they started doing like, hydration testing, which can be tricked. Not necessarily, they don't do it in every wrestling scenario necessarily, but it's like something that combat sports have been able to start implementing as a way to discourage people from cutting too much weight as a means of it's like a strategy when weight classes are part of what your sport is in terms of like you'll never see somebody in the NBA or NFL cutting weight or anything like that. Um,
I think in the
and
NFL, you'd see people trying to pack more mass
oh,
on.
for sure, for sure,
Like linemen, those guys turn into
definitely.
refrigerators.
I mean, but you look at a lot of the players and they look like they could be bodybuilders, even though they're not like cutting weight. But it's like a difference between an NFL player and an actual bodybuilder in terms of when they actually do the water weight cuts and then work on specific areas. Like if you just passed like a defensive end on the street wearing like regular clothes, a regular person is going to look at them and think, "Oh, that might be a bodybuilder."
Oh man! So
But
in
like an athlete is going to see like, "Oh, that's a football player."
I just learned about Eddie Hall, who won the title of world's top amateur strongman um, in 2023, and he was also he after he retired from football for he was a Green Bay Packer, but he went on to become a strongman, and in his debut he did it. That's awesome. So maybe there is a future for like linemen after the skins are put away and they have to.
Well, being a strongman doesn't pay very well.
Yeah.
Like, um, can you name one strongman besides him?
Nope. Let's see, strongman average.
I can name a couple just because I used to watch the competition, but I also realized like only one of them ever really made any money, and it was in the WWE.
Oh.
Well, I guess WWF at the time.
So
Mark Henry.
the average strongman employee makes around $91,000 a year. The average. So that's like the highest earners in the top 75 percentile paid over $100,000. So there is a pretty decent
That's
industry.
that's not a lot,
but
bro.
can it
'Cause you
actually
have to
pay
take
for all the
into
medical
account
shit and all of the?
exactly like that's what I was just about to say in terms of like
I mean, my
if that's what they're
understanding.
taking in.
Yeah. Well, my understanding is that even $300,000 a year, which is the average for like NFL or something like that, like maybe like 5 or 10 years ago, for the average career, that was not enough to to sock away to pay for the medical bills that they were gonna have to shell out for the rest of their lives for the kind of injuries they would suffer in
No,
3 years
no.
of professional athletics.
And this is where like the bodybuilding is significantly more financially viable than strongman. Um, but that's not even really like unless you're winning the Arnold Classic um, or Mr. Olympia, like you're not. I'm not saying you're not making money, but that's really the only place you're gonna make money as a bodybuilder anymore because there's not a whole bunch of like bodybuilder to actor
Yeah.
transitions.
Yeah. The
That doesn't really happen as much anymore. I mean, if it didn't really happen a lot in the first place, I think a lot of people discount how much time Arnold actually put into acting classes and shit. He really like he dedicated himself to acting in the same way that he dedicated himself to the gym, which is why he wasn't ever
huh.
really great as an actor, but because he was never like he didn't start off as a trained actor, he was as good as he was ever gonna be. Um,
So it looks like
but it
football
wasn't because he
players are making $750,000 a year for their rookie season, and then increases to 870 in their second season, 940 in their third. The median salary is $860,000 a year, though, and the average salary is $1.9 million per year. But how long does it take to get there? The most profitable league in North America, NFL is. NBA, oh, the average salary for the NBA though is 8.32 million, and in Major League Baseball the average is 4 million.
But that doesn't display the taxes that come with those salaries
Oh, of
too,
course.
which is hilarious. I mean, it's obvious when you say it, but I don't think people think about it like because most people never make that amount of money. So they think like, oh, this baseball player made $30 million. Like, well, he actually made like 10. But that's not to say it's like an insignificant amount of money.
Yeah, like 10 million's not
But
enough.
but when you hear 30, you think 30 and not 10.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And as like when you get above, I think what is it like 500,000 or something?
The
It's like
2022 salary cap was $208 million. Oh, pay cap for each team, $208 million.
hmm. But that's not on an individual player.
No, no,
And
that's the team.
they do those things over years to get around like um having it like past the salary cap. And so it's interesting to see the different deals in terms of like um Bobby
Oh,
Bonilla has one of the best deals ever because his salary continued to get paid after like basically until he dies. He got like it's one of the most insane contracts ever. And then I think Allen Iverson got one that's like a similar, but it's not as much per year.
so that big
Um,
number, that 750 for rookies. So that's if they actually play. It looks like there's a guy, Tyrone Swoops. He was in a Washington football team, the Seahawks. Made $38,000 over the course of 3 years because he was an undrafted free agent. Wow. The current lowest paid position is a fullback with a median income of $616,000. That's for a squad player, like practice squad.
sorry, Bobby Bonilla is not until he dies. It's till 2035.
How old is he?
He gets a he. The issue is he hasn't played for them in 24 years, and he gets 1.2 million dollars every year
So let's see.
until 2035.
Got 12 more years. He's 63. He'll be 75 when that runs out. I'm not trying to be dark here, but if he checks out before he's 75, then what you
I
said was
mean, the
accurate.
average black man, the mortality rate was like um 63 or something.
So he's like right at the
Different.
mortality, expected mortality threshold right now. He's actually in uncharted territories according to census, right? Good for him. I hope he gets like a heck of a lot of money. They're not playing
It
baseball.
looks like it's 65. Wait, hold on. Oh wait, it's now up to seven. Looks like it's up to 72,
Okay.
but it's like 81 for a white woman. Yeah, it's like 70.8 for black people compared to 76.4 to white people, but to 77.7 for Hispanic people. Interesting.
See. Hey, I should live to at least 83 and a half years. Maybe.
Well, I wonder if they like take into account mixed race. Yeah, because Asian American is 80.7. That's crazy. Yeah, but then the Chinese male is 75.
Hmm.
So Asian Americans doing better than Chinese people.
Well, we live in
But I guess that
America.
probably takes into account more than Chinese Americans, though,
Yeah.
which,
Asian American is a diaspora of
yeah.
of many different sources.
Yeah, I looked up Chinese American, but it returned Asian American. So I doubt they have, well, Chinese government might have Chinese American specific statistics,
Oh,
but
I'm sure they do. I fully expect CCP to have an entire like floor of whatever their intelligence agency is called that's dedicated to tracking like Asian Americans, and a specific wing of that floor is just for Chinese Americans.
So it looks like in New Jersey, I think it seems like people who live in New Jersey have a higher life expectancy than everywhere else. But Asian American males' life expectancy goes up to 88 years in Jersey versus like 78 in Hawaii. You would think it'd be higher in Hawaii, but that's fucking crazy. Like I don't know if it's the difference in healthcare or the difference, whatever it is. There's like a
Well,
10-year difference between living in Hawaii and living in New Jersey for an Asian American male. That's fucking insane, actually.
you'd think that because Hawaii is closer to China, they would have greater access to all that Eastern medicine. I'm pretty sure that
Then
at some point, every person of Chinese heritage, they go through a phase where they start
oh,
exploring Eastern medicine, and they're willing to like buy crushed mushrooms, and powdered roots, and make really disgusting tasting brews or teas or whatever you want to call it, and in their search to prepare their body for the transition to rejoin the energy of the universe or something.
well, if you look at females, it's different in terms of like the highest state expectancy for Asian American females is Massachusetts with 91.6, and then Jersey comes in at 4 at 90.6. But Hawaii's down lower with 85. So there's something consistent where it's like you would, like I said, you would think living in Hawaii would be like, oh, this is where you retire and have the longest life, but apparently not.
I mean,
They're,
Massachusetts is pretty nice. I mean, just from a geographic standpoint, it's a very pretty
what
state.
the fuck? But then if you go to all races, Hawaii is the highest life expectancy, like you would expect. That's what I wonder if white people go. No, it's not white people. Native American. That makes no sense. I mean, it makes sense to me that Hawaii is like, in terms of you, if you assume like Hawaii is the most relaxed place in terms of living in the idea of like the stereotype of it being a paradise island. As to why, I don't know. I've never been there, so I don't know if that's true or not. But if that idea
Hawaii's beautiful.
holds true, that's why I would assume people who live there live the longest. Like that's what I would assume.
It's
And the
warm,
numbers line up with that
never
with
gets too
all
cold.
life.
There's fruit trees everywhere. Um, it's gorgeous. If you know how to fish, there's world class fishing opportunities like all around the place because it's an island. At
But
some
something
point,
doesn't make sense.
at one point, Westerners introduced deer, and the deer are out of control, and you can just hunt deer all the time, apparently.
But it's like it doesn't make sense if all races life expectancy is higher. in Hawaii, but on the individual level, none of them are the highest in Hawaii. It doesn't make any fucking sense.
Oh wait, like none of the averages actually average out to the number that they say it is.
No, so if you look at all races, the life expectancy is the highest in Hawaii. But if you look at individual race breakdown, none of them are highest in Hawaii. That doesn't make any fucking sense.
Yeah.
That makes no fucking sense. I'm trying to like come up with a scenario in a way that like that somehow reconciles, but it doesn't make any fucking sense. Even Asian Pacific Islander is not like Alaska. Oh wait, that's the death rate. Sorry. But yeah, this
Oh, let's see.
life expectancy, it doesn't make any fucking sense internally. But it looks like
Hawaii.
Mississippi
So,
lowest.
so
That tracks.
Massachusetts is the second highest cost of living state, and Hawaii is number one. And let's see, I'm not sure what this number, the index is. Let's see, where's Indiana? Indiana is a 91.5 index, and go down to the bottom. Massachusetts is a 148.4. District of Columbia 148.7, and we get to Hawaii 179. So it's like twice as expensive to live in Hawaii as it is to live in Indiana. And that alone is a barrier that prevents a lot of people from living in that kind of environment. Where's Florida?
I mean, but I feel
Florida's
like in
31.
those places, if the cost of living has that much disparity, the pay scales have that much disparity too. So it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, if somebody's trying to move there on an Indiana salary, they're fucking, of course,
Yeah,
not
that's
going
not
to be able
happening.
to.
That's why they would move to Florida, because it's only a difference of, what did I say Indiana was, 91.5? Florida is 102.3.
I mean, but I guess that's where you would then look at like the percentage rates of migration from state to state and see like,
Yeah.
you know,
What's the life
one would
expectancy in
assume,
Florida?
I mean, I bet it gets skewed because it's a retirement community.
Yeah.
Or I don't know if it's a whole retirement state. Let's see. Damn, it's like almost right in the middle. Or it's at 22.
Huh.
Not as high as I thought. But I guess that's in terms of like, whoa, what? So for whatever reason, Congress. Ah, Washington, D.C. has the highest life expectancy rate of white people. Congress just like skewing the numbers dramatically. All those fucking old people in Congress, man.
Well, they don't live in D.C.
I mean, but that's where they probably put their residence.
No,
They
they have to have a residence like in the state they represent. Like Tennessee
they have
Trey,
to
he
have
has a
residence
he has
in
a
the
house
state
in
they
Indiana.
represent. But I know a lot of them have like residences in DC,
Yeah.
which again is like,
Yeah, I don't know how
it's
that part
like
works.
you have to live in a place a certain amount of time. I think it's like 6 months in a lot of cases. So that's where a lot of senators can claim two states because they'll have 6 months residence in both. But it's like you can't really claim more than two. It'd be damn near impossible to claim more than two. But you can definitely claim two in terms of like,
Man.
well, because they take the taxes too. It's like if you live in two states, but you're gonna pay taxes in both states.
Oh yeah.
So I think that's ultimately why it's like you can decide, if you want to say I'm like this is my, you know, I'm a DC resident. You can say one or the other, but legally it's like you have to live there a certain amount of time. But once you hit it, you can claim it, even if you have claimed in another state, as long as the amounts
Man,
of
it's
time don't
expensive to
conflict
live
with
in the
each other.
District of Columbia. Holy shit.
Oh yeah. But this is why it's like you see the way that um certain states don't will not have like uh income tax, and then certain states will not have like fucking other taxes, where it's like that's why people register their businesses in Delaware or Nevada or some shit, but then they'll have their residence in another place, and then they'll get like a PO box in another state, and it's like
An a forwarding address.
right for sure, but there's even to that point, a lot of the like you can purchase a business residence in a different state to get like the benefits from that state, but they'll put up a fake front for the business residence that you were purchasing it from, and that's where like um it was like becoming a whole side grift for people to sell PO boxes in spaces that didn't exist in the way that they were presenting them online. And that's where it's like I can't really call that capitalism because it's not actually serving you the thing that you claiming to be purchasing at that point. But that's why like it's especially in light of these senators that like sit there and hold on to power for so long and like change the rules just to make it easier for them to fucking keep living as long as they are, and then like glitching out on us in front of everybody, like just fucking full on like hardware failures in real time because they're just too old to be holding on to, like they shouldn't be in the positions they are because they're like Dianne Feinstein. I don't know how that lady is still alive. She looks like the fucking living dead. I'm not trying to hate on her specifically because, like, in terms of Glitch McConnell looking like he falls a lot, like that's where you can look at somebody and be like, man, I bet you fall a lot, don't you? He definitely makes me think like he probably can't go a full day without somebody having to pick him up off the ground for one reason or another. Like he's not full on rotting in real time. Dianne Feinstein is like, she looks like she's fucking rotting. If you like touched her, like her fucking skull would like fall off and just roll off or some shit just because there's not enough connective tissue left. And that's where I'm like,
It wouldn't just burst into a
you,
cloud of dust shaped like a skull
yeah,
laughing at you.
like, lady, you should not be pretending you're making decisions, and let alone like she's definitely not making any fucking decisions. It's clearly her handlers.
Well,
But you see her, you see Biden, you see fucking McConnell. They're all clearly just like handlers fucking shoveling them or shuffling them to the podium, making them regurgitate this speech that they've been fucking practicing for like the last 3 days or whatever, then shuffling them back, hoping they don't fucking poop in their pants on the way off stage every fucking time. That's what it looks like. Where I'm like, dude, I don't know how anybody has faith in any of these. Like, I'm not trying to sound ageist in terms of like, it's not about old people. This is about old people who want to like hold on to power and fucking sit there and just die in front of us, die in office while they're legislating are restrictions. Because that's why I'm like, it'd be different if they weren't so fucking regressive. But you can't even get fucking abortions anymore because of these fucking old people. We're like literally regressing into like Jim Crow, fucking women's suffrage, because these old people, that's all they fucking know. They're like having dementia attacks, and then they're like trying to legislate the shit that they grew up with because they don't fucking know any different. They're like, oh, it's 1950. We must be fighting fucking segregation and fighting civil rights again, because these motherfuckers are like having dementia attacks in real time and then trying to pass it off as just regular ass legislation. Nah, man, I don't fucking buy it. Obviously, there's like some hyperbole, but if you think about it, that's what makes the most fucking sense to me in terms of like, why are we like in a situation where most of the states you can't get fucking abortions anymore? Why are we in a state where black people are in a situation where we're having to like reassert our existence as human beings because now they're trying to like not teach slavery, and they're saying that like black people gain skills
Yeah,
from
they had
life
skills they could use later in life.
Yeah, and like,
how to be a
it's
slave?
because these motherfuckers don't know they don't know anything different, and they're just like they're on these loops. They're stuck in these loops, and that's where to me it's like, can't they just die already? Like, fuck, man. Can't these floods just like take a bunch of them out already? Like, and I'm not like trying to sound macabre, but it's like, fuck, that seems like the only way we're ever going to get out of the 50s. And that's where I'm just like, it seems when you see the like difference in life expectancy for white people, where you like go down to West Virginia and they're all living like 10 years less than the fucking Congress people. Oh, what's the difference there? White America? What's going on where all the people in Appalachia have 10 years taken off their life versus these fucking Congress people?
There's Mountain Dew in the tap water.
uh,
That's what it's got to be. It's got to be the Mountain Dew. It's. I know we want to believe that like these elected officials are the final word, but I think that at this point they're part of a team, and at some point they don't actually know everything about what's going on in a given, like, like cabinet members. The president can't possibly know every detail, and that's why he has cabinet members and chiefs of staff and chiefs of whatever, and it's a group effort. It's always been a group effort, but it's really easy to pin it on one person. And granted, it's crazy that we have figureheads who sit at the seat of power for their respective, position of authority or whatever for decades. At least they eventually die, right? Because how long can we really have an America that has a functional democracy if the decisions are being made by people who aren't willing to even work? I never thought that I would be in a position to say, like, yeah, I remember when I was younger, abortions were legal, and flying on a plane was like taking a taxi, or going to a sporting event. Like, I never realized that at some point we'd be walking through metal detectors and they'd be checking the size of your keys to make sure that they don't present it like they're not actually a tactical tool. Is such an armed society really a brave society? Are they really free and brave? There aren't any. I think the risk of going outside and getting attacked by a bear or a cougar in most of the country is very low. And there are some areas where bears still exist and there are cougar, and those things can definitely kill a human. But yeah, it takes a special kind of person to want to live in like predator country. or big cat country, or and most of those places, like, you can't just go wandering around. You fall off of a hill and roll down and break your neck on a tree or on a rock. Slip off of a cliff face and land on a rock 50 feet below. Definitely kill somebody. But people still want to live in those places too. You don't need a gun for a cliff.
Well, those people want to live in those places until some shit happens to them where they realize like not being close to a police station or a fucking fire station means like, oh, if a fire starts, everything's burning and maybe some other shit too that you didn't like even own. And now you're on the hook for a fucking forest fire and everybody hates you. And it's like, you know, I do think there's a sense of like when people don't have anything happen to them, they think they're not going to be the one. Um, and then ultimately, it's like not even about them being the one. It's like, oh, it's not just a single. This is a numbers game, and it's going to happen to multiples, and you could be one of the multiples at one time because shit rarely just ever happens to one person, and that's where um Dunning Kruger in tandem with exposure bias, in tandem with uh, not being able to filter out noise, not being able to understand what's good information, you're going to have a lot of people making terrible decisions that don't always result in terrible outcomes, which is why a lot of them continue to make terrible decisions, which is like, there in a sense it's like there's a gambling aspect to it, but to me I think there's shit where people should have had immediate repercussions and then they don't, and then that compels them to keep making those types of decisions over and over to the point where even if they get a repercussion at some point, they've become so used to things not happening to them that even if it does finally happen, they're like, oh, that's a fluke. And it's like, then they become in their own minds like invincible or that lucky person, even if they've now encountered the like thing that should prove that like, oh, I should worry about dying, or I should worry about um getting arrested, or I should worry about like getting robbed or some shit where there's a certain amount of worry that is rational to keep you from encountering those things as much as you can within your own limitations of power. But there is a cutoff point to where that worrying becomes crippling or starts to shape someone's behavior in a way that then becomes negative. And I think that's where you get the doomsday preppers and you get the people who have like 75 guns and like 5,000 rounds of ammo, but only one person because they've ostracized their entire family because of guns. And like, there's no actual army for them to fucking arm. And it's like this stockpile of weapons and ammo has replaced any sort of social connection because to them, that sense of safety that is an irrational response to an irrational amount of worry is consuming their feedback in terms of the dopamine and any sort of uh, endocrine response that gives them any sort of like positive feelings. And once you can start replacing that with any sort of consumption, it's dangerous, like to make that person isolated, but especially with guns, it puts people in not even necessarily the violent mindset so much as like when you start identifying with material objects, especially material objects of only tools for destruction or only tools made for killing, that naturally puts this person on like a disastrous path that's only going to end a few ways with them hurting either someone else, themselves, or both. And that's where it's not even, it's not even really just guns because then that's where, to a certain degree, like knives are that way in that when you have the butterfly knife, um, switchblade era, like you're not using those to fucking skin a fish. You're not using those to like whittle wood. There's only a few things you're gonna use a butterfly knife or a switchblade for. One of them's to intimidate somebody. One of them's to stab somebody. Other those aren't really good for anything else. Other ones you're gonna fucking end up cutting yourself doing some dumb shit. That's about the only thing those knives are good for. So like the idea of somebody owning one of those things and trying to justify any other outcome besides those three things, they're like, oh, I want to like see if I cut myself. Well, okay, that's a good reason to have a fucking butterfly knife or a good reason to have a switchblade. You like living on the edge. You want to see if you can have a dangerous object and not lose a finger. Okay, that makes sense. If you're saying you want to have that just to be prepared for like even actual confrontation, it's not that good of a weapon. Like a baton would be like a collapsible baton would be a much better weapon than a knife, like a switchblade in um like a confrontation scenario for various reasons, but the main being like a blade has to really, you don't have to be necessarily super accurate with it, but you have to be really close in a way that even a baton gives you like a few extra inches from like that that type of engagement. And that's where I'm like the reality of like self-defense versus offense and intimidation are two different complete scenarios where things that would be good for offense and good for intimidation wouldn't necessarily actually be good for defense when you're trying to de-escalate and not trying to like maim or harm someone, because that's where like de-escalating without maiming or harming is probably more difficult than de-escalating while maiming or harming, if you consider maiming or harming a way to de-escalate. But that's also why like in certain scenarios it wouldn't be considered anything but an escalation, and I'll explain one in terms of like if you're in uh, a like mental health facility and you're trying to de-escalate, there's no facility in the world that's going to allow you to like shoot that person and call it de-escalation. Whereas like if you're a cop and that happens on the street, they may consider it de-escalation, especially if that person actually is an active threat trying to harm other people beyond themselves. And that's where there's gonna be a bunch of different scenarios where like in the real world, shooting somebody, it could be a de-escalation. So like it's not easy to say that like shooting someone is always an escalation, because there definitely are
I actually
scenarios in which
actually
sorry,
watched
go
a
ahead.
video recently of a man who got arrested because he shot somebody who assaulted him from his car, and then he got out and shot them again. And it was all captured on like traffic cameras. So very clear what happened. And the outcome was that he was charged with discharging a weapon or a firearm in city limits, aggravated assault with a firearm, a whole bunch of other stuff. And the reason that I thought it was interesting is it's like, well, yeah, obviously he didn't need to proceed, but in that moment, whatever training or lack thereof that they had did not kick in, and they proceeded to shoot the person again, even though they were laying on the ground, not moving. And then police show up, and they don't detain him immediately. They perform their initial on-site investigation. Then they put him into a vehicle and take him off. But I imagine that actually happens more often than is reported or is available to the media to be spread around. I bet that kind of thing happens quite a lot, actually.
The issue being those two shots are completely different.
Yeah.
The first time he shoots that person, it's a de-escalation.
Yep.
The second time he shoots that person, it's a re-escalation in a way that not you, but American individuals think in a lot of cases that once the situation has escalated, that there's no end point to the de-escalation until somebody's dead. But that's not 1,000% not true, to the extent of once there's no threat, anything that's an act of
he became the aggressor.
Becomes an aggressor at that point. And I have a cousin who their car got stolen, and in the process, the people who were stealing the car, he shot at them as they were driving away, and the bullet hit the neighbor's door, so he ended up getting arrested. And it was obviously you don't want, as a family member, you don't want him to go to prison or jail, but at the time it's I understood yeah, that's reckless endangerment and also the shot was that's a re-escalation, because they were running away at that point. Whether they were still in the act of stealing, they weren't actively threatening his life, and I don't think there was an active threat to his life ever. So you can't just shoot at people as a citizen, even though cops do it and they get away with it. They're not supposed to do it either.
Yeah, so wait, what happens? He hits the car and kills the person inside his car. Now his car is full of blood and has a bullet hole. And they crash the car into something and cause even more damage.
He's not thinking about that. He's acting on adrenaline. So obviously nobody really wants that outcome, and he's lucky he missed. But it's also that scenario is not clear enough to Americans because of movies, because of lack of desire to understand clarity of the law, and then because of police not having a good enough connection with American people to explain when you can or you can't legally shoot at someone and not be the aggressor, in terms of it should be very clear to people. But that's a failure on law enforcement and the law itself in terms of legislators.
Well, castle doctrines also have this really explicit. Well, they usually have a really explicit section that says duty to retreat. Once the threat level has dropped, you don't pursue. You stay indoors.
But the threat level dropping is not. It's all. It's never clear.
Yeah.
And that's also where between states, it doesn't even exist in every state. Yeah. So it exists in our state, but I think it's
Indiana, Florida, Texas.
Yeah. It's a handful of states that even have that law anymore, if ever. So that's where, again, even in Texas, it's not applied evenly. Mm-mm. It's all situational, and it's going to a lot of it's going to have to do with like, unfortunately, the race of the people involved in terms of like, it's not always going to be so black and white. Um, but it a lot of times is in terms of when stand your ground gets employed, it's not it's
There are
not always
24
because
states with Castle Doctrine. Holy crap.
huh. Well,
Let's see.
and
Indiana,
that's where
Ohio.
they're gonna vary wildly in their capacity of like uh ability to
Kentucky.
respond. And that's where it's like some of them only extend within your actual physical home, some of them go on your entire property, some of them extend to your vehicle. They're super inconsistent. And that's where again the inconsistency and understanding is not exclusively, but almost exclusively the responsibility of the state and the law enforcement people. Because you can't blame a fucking regular ass American for like having a bunch of misinformation in the form of like TV shows and movies supersede real law. When where the fuck are they gonna go to like, or when are they gonna have that information given to them properly in a way where I'm like, if if they had courses like, it's wild to me that you have to, I mean, you don't have to, but you're given a lot of motivation and peer pressure to take courses to learn how to drive to get your license. But that same sort of pressure doesn't exist for any sort of like test to get licensed with a gun. It's like all you have to do is pass a background check effectively in terms of like, there's certain things if you're gonna buy like a semi-automatic pistol, well, they should train that person to be able to take it apart or proper trigger discipline and shit like that. Where I'm like, I know the gun shows definitely don't do that, but the gun stores don't really do anything like that in terms of like they have courses, but it's not really like a culture around taking that course and then getting your gun permit in the same way that it is with like driving, where you get your like learner's permit and then get your um actual license. And in the process, you're going to be taking driver's ed. Like driver's ed is like, that's basically part of American culture for like the last 60 years in terms of just mainstream things that like high schoolers are expected to do. Oh, you're going to go to driver's ed. You're going to get your permit. If you're planning to drive at all, that's the process. There's no equivalent culturally for guns. And it's I don't know if it was always that way. It seems like there might have been something like, obviously the NRA exists, but they don't have a real culture of safety in that,
The,
like
the NRA
they'll talk
used to
about.
have deliver materials like instructional materials, safety course, or access to safety courses. They used to provide a lot of that infrastructure, but it was when Wayne Lapierre uh, came to the become the face of NRA that they really started employing a lot of different tactics, and they became much more political. It's it's strange because when I was a Boy Scout, I remember seeing NRA material, and it was almost all about like firearm safety or hunter safety. shotgun safety.
See, I remember me seeing DNR stuff like that, but I don't necessarily remember seeing NRA stuff like that as a kid because I was in the Scouts too, which is where I definitely remember seeing DNR
There was a lot of DNR
fire,
stuff.
and that's where again it may have just been the even a year apart in terms of like what we saw, but it's like I remember I think I was in the Scouts in '93 at the like, or maybe even '92 at the latest, or like at the earliest start. Like I don't think it was in '80s or anything.
Yeah, I think in '91 was the first Boy Scout summer camp I attended, and everyone, of course, wanted to do the shooting merit badge, and I was not able to do it that year. But I remember just when you went in the first time, they made you sit down for like the shooting range orientation, and I remember seeing all sorts of literature. And they're like, here's the stuff that you need to know to do this stuff. And there was a lot of it was Boy Scout material, of course. But it's strange. I think the version of the NRA that existed that was interfaced with Boy Scouting was a very different version of it than the politically active version that exists now. It might have been like a subdivision of the one that existed back in the early '90s. But I remember there was a distinct moment when the NRA became the focus of the media because they weren't doing what they were supposed to be doing. I don't know. For a long time, it was called the Civilian Marksmanship Program, and it was a way for civilians to gain access to decommissioned rifles and firearms. But to do that, you had to participate in the actual program. You had to go to educational events and competitions and demonstrate proficiency with these tools. I think one of the events was actually like disassembly and reassembly of the rifle, like that kind of stuff. Like there was a culture that encouraged familiarity, fluency, and some skill with these things. But I think all that stuff's being defunded. Also, do we really want people gaining access to former military grade assault rifles or assault rifles and battle rifles? Because that just seems like a bad idea. The only people that should have those things are people who have been trained to use them, and really they should only have those things in when they're deployed, and maybe not even then. Maybe only when they're deployed to places where combat's actively happening.
I think the issue is also like we've gotten to such a point where if anybody's using one of those in combat, it's 1,000% a choice and it's not a necessity. So, like, the idea of continuing to make infantry arms instead of like scaling it out or making like non lethal automated response, because it don't have to be lethal either. Because that's my issue is like, the way they make it seem like, oh, you're gonna have a drone to go in and neutralize, it has to have a gun. No, the fuck it doesn't. It doesn't have to have a gun on it. There's so many different ways you could like neutralize a person without killing them. That the idea of just like strapping a gun on a fucking robot dog is the
Man, the Ukrainians are like precision dropping grenades into bunkers on Russians. So they can drop like from high enough that the people on the ground can't even see the drone. And so if Ukrainians can develop, I think they're on their like what fourth or fifth or 20th generation of drone by now, with like they can drop something from the sky into a hole. They don't need to kill them. They could knock them out. They could use sleeping gas or some kind of drug to make them completely complacent. Give them a big dose of aerosolized ketamine or something. They just lay there and drool on themselves. Go in there and shoot them with tasers if you really want to. There are plenty of ways to neutralize people without killing them. It's just, I think, the Wild West still exists in like rose-colored fantasy for a lot of people. And the idea of bloodless conflict is like an oxymoron.
Well, especially if fentanyl really works the way those cops say, which it doesn't,
It
obviously.
does not work like that.
It'd be so easy to drop fentanyl bombs on people if shit really worked that way. But obviously, cops be lying.
Yeah.
Which is where I'm like, aerosolized ketamine, it seems like some shit that they'd actually try to do.
Man, when I see those videos of
work.
one crime scene investigator dropping and going into a seizure, all I can think is, if there's enough of that shit in the air to make one person do that, why isn't everyone else going fishing out on the floor too? Every single person in those rooms should be like falling over.
Well, and this is where, okay, between those cops and then like movie representations of like chloroform or tranquilizer darts, it's like really difficult to get a grasp on how long that shit actually takes to work in terms of like, the reason a lot of times they have to end up putting wild animals down is because the fucking tranquilizer is taking too long to kick in.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't work fast enough for them to actually be neutralized before some shit is going wrong. And that's where it's like, you can't really blame an American for not knowing like what bear tranquilizer does to a bear. or like what horse tranquilizer does to a horse.
Those things only work if you get it into the right spot too. Like not like you can you can't just shoot them in the shoulder and hope that it's going to get to the right spot. It hits there. If it doesn't, like, if it just kind of gets into the muscle, if it only gets into the fat, it doesn't do anything. Just like. I think, what was it? That Jay and Silent Bob movie, Strike Back, when they get the blowgun with the animal tranquilizer and they shoot Will Ferrell with it, and he just acts real doped up and happy. Takes a nap at one point. I think that's the kind of thing, like you were saying, in the media, like that's the kind of thing that informs people's expectations of how these things actually work. But like, my understanding of bear spray is that there's a way to use it, and then there's a way to not use it, and you have to actually read the manual on how to use it properly to give yourself the best chance of getting away from a bear that's coming at you. And it's not like using pepper spray on some mugger.
Well, one of the issues with both of them is you can't be like downwind because then you hit yourself.
So there's in the Jason Statham Meg to the Trench movie, his sequel to the Meg. There are these two guys that are, I guess they're the comic relief, and the whole movie is kind of a comic book anyways, but there are these two characters that are very clearly there to be fun, and their plan is, because they're trapped in a room, they're going to get out, so the guy's going to crack the door, spray the pepper spray, and then they're going to close the door, and then the other guy's going to run outside and get everyone with a stun gun. And of course it fails, he sprays it, but the other guy just runs outside right into the pepper spray. That's actually what I imagine happens to the average person who tries to use pepper spray, is they end up getting themselves. Because where's the training? There's no, like, I never took a how to use pepper spray program in high school or in college. I'm sure there's a self-defense course out there that teaches people how to use pepper spray, but does that even exist?
I think it's part of like police academy shit where you have to get, not you, but someone will have to get pepper sprayed, someone have to get tased. They might all have to do it.
Okay, so there's a pepper spray class in Indianapolis. It's a 2.5 hour course. It addresses the effectiveness and limitations of pepper spray, along with proper use, range, effects, and legal issues. So there's more than an hour away from here. And the beginner class of at IU self-defense beginner class does not include pepper spray.
I imagine you'd probably have to get like biohazard certified or some shit
Yeah.
to be able to like teach a class in that.
Okay, today class we're going to be handling a chemical that could blind you. So
Yeah.
let's get our safety goggles on. Mugger is like, give me your wallet. Hold on, let me get my safety glasses on. What are you doing? I'm gonna pepper spray.
Yeah, there's definitely pepper spray certification, it looks like. Um, but I wonder like what's the uh consistency.
4 hour end user level certification program focuses on the deployment, handling, and documentation of oleresin capsaicin. Oh, that's it.
I bet it varies by state too in terms of like what's necessary. This is where states' rights get fucking uh, dicey.
I don't know. I don't think that. Well, this isn't like a lethal force, but it's still force. So the castle doctrine rules would still apply. You have to be defending yourself, and you can't chase after somebody with pepper spray. I mean, I suppose you could, but you really wouldn't want to. Come back here!
Well, by proxy, like you'd be running into it.
Yeah, I know. That's what I mean. Like, there's just so many things that are wrong chasing after somebody while attempting to pepper spray them. Oh. I guess pepper spray is better than like miniature flamethrowers.
Well, flamethrowers were like always misrepresented in media too. That shit's always so weird.
Yeah.
That's another one. And those are not smart
Flamethrowers are
weapons.
they're not like regulated at all.
I mean, it's going to be really difficult for a person to get an actual flamethrower because of
Um
the like
so
I don't
there
know.
no, I mean there are no federal laws that exist regarding flamethrowers at this time.
No,
And
but where are you going to find one like that's like from a company that you can trust that's not some like decommissioned military tool that was acquired in some illicit manner to not know if the fucking casing and housing is safe so that when you
see.
actually go to use it you fucking blow yourself up. That's what I mean in terms of like, yeah, there's no rule against it in the same way as a machine gun,
You can buy
but
an exothermic technologies pulse fire LRT flamethrower from Walmart for $793.49. Fucking Walmart. Uh, $800 wall. Hey, you can get it $600 from AliExpress.
I feel like it's not like an actual flamethrower and they're just calling it one.
The exothermic technologies flamethrower is it's used for cleaning like what is sackworms. It's for landscaping. It's for like field burning, that sort of thing. I've seen variations of this design at like like I think at Tractor Supply store. Yeah, Walmart's the top hit for flamethrower near me. That's crazy. Home Depot, Flame King. Oh, that's just a propane torch.
Yeah, this looks like a torch, not an
Um,
actual flamethrower.
oh, the exothermic
Oh,
technologies.
see, yeah, this one's 25 feet, which is where I'm like,
That's not really that
that's
far.
that's
That's
not really a flamethrower.
well, that's what I
Flamethrowers
mean.
go like 75 to 100 feet,
Yeah, no, that's what I mean.
if
That
not
that
more.
that 25 footer. That's for like getting sackworms out of a tree or controlled burns of a farm of a field at a farm. It's not a. It's for like pest control. It's not for human pest control. And also, those things are huge and they can't carry much fuel. Like the small ones essentially dump everything out right away, unless it's just like a propane torch, which is basically just an oversized lighter.
So an actual flamethrower is like $3,500 that goes 100 feet.
If we go to Battlefield Vegas, we can
There's
rent
one
a Vietnam era M9 flamethrower with a 45-pound fuel tank for $395
per hour or what?
um,
Or just
for the
what
tank.
per
So,
day?
or just
Oh,
for the tank. I think it's the kind of thing that if you just ran it down, it'd probably go down pretty quickly. Sunday
sure.
through Thursday, 9:30 through 6 p.m. Friday to Saturday, 9:30 through 7 p.m.
Oh, is it like on their site or
Oh
is
yeah,
it?
it's in near Las Vegas.
Yeah, because that's what I was trying to figure out, like how if they're renting it people to take away, like how that shit would work. But
Oh
that,
man, they can't let
yeah,
people
no
just
way.
walk off with a military grade flamethrower. This isn't Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. You can't just keep that stuff. What's the the Boring Company? Not a flamethrower, but it's a flamethrower.
It's a torch.
It's a torch.
Yeah, that's
It's a
definitely not. That's not a flamethrower.
yeah.
It's definitely a
That's
torch.
that's a torch. Yeah, when I search for flamethrower, almost everything that comes up is essentially a torch for burning weeds or for killing sackworms.
What the fuck?
Arc flamethrower. This mounts on the bottom of a firearm. That just seems like a terrible idea. I'm going to put
Yeah,
a fuel tank right next to this thing that explodes on demand.
I don't know. Like between Evil Dead and I don't know what else. I guess Gears of War, flamethrowers and chainsaws are not good weapons for like controlled combat. I don't know at what point those two things became like fetishized in action.
Yeah, like the idea of a burning zombie coming at me is even worse than a normal zombie
Yeah,
coming
right.
at me. I think a spear is like the ideal. Like if you gotta engage with somebody, you might as well keep them as far away as you can. Put a knife on the end of it. I've seen plenty of videos of
Spear or halberd.
yeah, some kind
Yeah.
of like pole arm combat where it's like pole arm versus axe wielder, pole arm versus sword, various types of sword. The pole arm almost always wins.
Yeah.
It's like it's not even funny. Like they just swing that thing around enough times, and it's faster than the end of a sword because it's longer.
Yeah.
And
Pole
then
arms are not sexy,
no,
but
they're not.
they're
They're just vicious. I mean, what else are you gonna? How else are you gonna get somebody off of a horse? Walk up to
but
him
at
and
the
ask
same time,
nicely.
it's like as somebody who loves swords, it's like a pole arm is clearly a superior weapon in terms of like almost every scenario. There's I can only think of a couple scenarios where like a
Hallways,
sword
entryways.
exactly. And that's where I'm like the only scenarios where a pole or a sword is not superior to a pole arm is like really confined spaces and even
Yeah,
then like a knife is probably going to be better than a sword in those cases. So it's
yeah.
like, well,
You got to scale down to the size of the environment.
yeah.
Wide open, pole arm, totally. Because if they're running away, you might even be able to spear them.
I don't know if you saw somebody threw a fucking spear at a driver and it like went into their
Oh,
um fucking like the drive shaft, the steering column,
oh wow.
and it like it almost pierced the person, but it like luckily it hit the fucking steering column
Texas
instead.
woman thankful to be alive after spear goes through windshield. It's struck into her steering column Sunday, August 20. It was not road rage or anything. This was just unprovoked and completely random, she told KSAT.
Yeah, yeah, and that's where I'm like, if you see the picture, it's like the accuracy that person had. They'd done that shit before in terms of that was not their first time throwing a spear, but that's where pole arm with the blade is like a fucking superior weapon.
Got a car. Hey, it took out
You
horses for a
see,
long fucking time. A car is just a modern horse.
yeah, which again, seeing what a spear did to that vehicle, and if it would have been, 6 inches to the left, dead, dead. And that's where you can't really do that shit with a sword. I'm
No,
sorry, I love swords, but you can't. Sorry, I'm not gonna sit here and pretend like, oh, the right throw. Like, no, that's just some like everyday pole arm shit right there.
I'm not even sure you could
But
stab an engine anywhere from above it and stop it. I don't think you could stab an engine with anything and stop it. You need like an actual like firearm to stop an engine. You could probably stab it in
I
the
mean,
radiator and make it die a slow overheating death, but it would still run for a while.
yeah, you'd really need some like um metal that's gonna go through
The
steel
intake. It can go,
or
no, if they have
yeah.
plastic intake, it can go through the top of the
Oh
engine
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and drive a bunch of shit into the intake and into the pistons and really mess things up. And a lot of modern cars have turbochargers, and all they have to do is suck a little bit of plastic, and then they eat themselves. And so, yeah, maybe nowadays you could take a vehicle out with a sword if you knew where to strike. You'd have to know. You'd really have to know what you're doing.
Well, on that note, I feel like an engine would be easier to take out with one spear than like five bullets in terms of like if you place five bullets well enough, they'd have to be like armor piercing to get through the metal first off, and then you'd have to do enough in the
You'd have to hit
right
in the right
spots.
spots.
Yeah, where it's like with the spear, it's just like it's just gonna jam shit up so immediately, like almost anywhere you put it. That's
And it didn't, and it
again,
went through at an angle. So
yeah,
I've
yeah.
I've watched videos of people shooting up cars because I like watching car wrecks and car chases, and I just like watching this stuff because it's interesting to me. And occasionally I find one where people are like, yeah, let's shoot a bunch of guns at this car and see how long it takes to destroy it. See if we can blow up the gas tank. And they never blow up the gas tank. It just does not happen. It goes right through the other side and then it just has two holes in it. But but most of the time when bullets hit the windshield, they don't continue to travel the same direction they were traveling before they hit the glass. They deflect at some angle relative to the glass and to the angle that they were fired at. And so they have this really strange trajectory that isn't as predictable as you think it would. But this thing goes straight through the side of the windshield into the freaking back of the steering wheel. This is one of those tactical zombie spears too. Holy crap.
Well, but like the idea that somebody's just out there throwing spears like that is like,
At the road too. What the
what are you
hell?
doing? What are you doing? What is that person doing? Because I don't know if you remember when the Good Son came out and people started throwing shit off of overpasses almost immediately afterwards.
Ugh.
It's like there'll be some shit that happens and then something will get into the zeitgeist and then it's everywhere. but like it was as if because the good son made that a plot point, it was like a bunch of fucking badass teenagers went out and started throwing shit off of overpasses, thinking they're, I'm Macaulay Culkin or whatever, whoever the fuck, yeah, or yeah,
It was Macaulay Culkin, wasn't it?
yeah. But it's like them trying to emulate that character while also making themselves unique. It's like they all got that thought at the same time because of that movie, and I think that's where there there are things that like pop into the zeitgeist where I'm like, I hope people don't start throwing spears. You know what I mean? Like, where did that even fucking come from? Like, what is this person doing or consuming or like reading to make them go out and throw a spear into fucking traffic? Like, I hope it's just, I mean, it's almost never, it's like roaches. It's like if you see one, it's almost never just one. But
They had to have been watching one of those zombie shows, because in all of those shows, the people who don't have guns, they use spears because they want to keep those things as far away as they can. Except for like the badasses who want to use a hammer or a hatchet. But most of those people end up getting bitten at some point and dying. The ones who live use spears or guns.
right,
But when
the
they
ones
run
who
out of
use
bullets,
swords
they use
always die.
yeah, well, yeah. Or it's Michonne, who is like somehow she has plot armor that protects her from everything, but everyone else dies if they use a sword. But if you use a spear, you'll live, even if you run out of bullets or arrows. Pick up a spear. That's got to be it. I mean, my love of the polearm comes from kung fu movies, where the person who has the blade on the end of the bow staff is able to just waylay everybody because that's just how it works. You watch Jackie Chan clear the room with a stick, and you realize, hey man, there's something to that stick. But I think nowadays it's got to be the zombies. The zombie zeitgeist is fueling the desire to master strange weaponry. Is like a crossbow is used for hunting. A bow and arrow are used for hunting and sport. A rifle is used for hunting. A pole arm is not used for hunting. I mean, I'm sure somebody's out there hunting a wild boar with a spear, but that just seems extra dangerous.
I'm almost afraid to start Googling spear stuff just in case like one person Googling it starts some weird zeitgeist cascade of other people. Oh, I wonder, I should start Googling spear stuff too. Because nobody knows how the zeitgeist works.
No, it already exists. When I view all videos, there are 29,600 results for spear hunting hogs. So it's a thing. Okay, so maybe they're practicing their hog hunting and they hit a car. Man, I'm not sure what kind of mindset someone has to have to think that it's a good idea to go chasing after a animal with tusks with a knife on the end of a stick. At least bow hunters have the right idea where they get up in a tree where they're safe. And the guys with guns, I mean, obviously they have guns, but I've seen videos where I saw a video not too long ago of some hunters last winter getting chased out of the woods by a pack of wild boar. And at one point, like, they were being overrun and they were just shooting at this pack of boar. And then the boar run around them. And then, of course, in my mind, it's like, I wonder what was chasing those boar. Because the boar didn't seem to notice the hunters. They were going around them. But even in that kind of moment, being charged by a pack of wild boar, even a group of hunters with firearms, they could have been severely wounded, mortally wounded. Actually, you know what? I'm not surprised people want to go chase after a boar with a spear. People sign up to go join the military all the time, and some of them with the goal of just learning how to use weaponry. So,
So the person who threw the spear fucking had posted a video before doing it, and it was like, I'm just gonna go throw a spear at a car tonight. And it was
oh,
the same fucking spear in the video as the one in the car. So it seems like if that was like,
that's he planned to go throw it at a car. He could have killed somebody. It wasn't an
yeah,
accident. It wasn't a freak accident. That was like an
whoa,
intentional.
that
I'm gonna
was,
go
it was
spear
very
something.
planned. It was like intentional. So like that's why to me it's like this dude was clearly having an episode. But that's fucking crazy. Yeah, the people on TikTok apparently found the video and saved it before the dude had a chance to delete it because he deleted the original one, but now there's copies of it up. This is why I love the internet in terms of like, on the one hand, you got the bad, but then you got these fucking like zeitgeist detectives that like, I saw a picture, this girl posted an image. She was like, um, I had a best friend for a day on a cruise ship when I was like in kindergarten. Internet, do your thing, and they like found the fucking girl in the picture within like 24 hours, and it's like, there's this element of like, if there's information to be found and the internet starts sniffing it out, they're gonna find it. But that's also, on the other hand, it's like, I think that's the toxic doxing, you know, that shit is also a downside. But the fact that this dude threw a fucking spear and the internet got his ass within a week, that's wild. In terms of like,
Wait, did the internet find him before local law enforcement?
oh yeah, oh yeah.
Oh
They did.
boy.
They definitely found that shit before law enforcement did. I don't even know if law enforcement um arrested the dude yet, but they're like going through. I think now they have to go through the paces of like proving the shit in the video that he recorded is the same one as the one in the car. It's obviously the same
Oh, they'll be
same
able to,
spear.
the forensic data contained within the upload of the video will contain the information like what kind
I
of
mean, it's
sensor was
fucking.
used and what kind of device it was loaded from, and probably
No,
the.
you can see it in the video. It's the same. There's no question.
Oh,
It's
I
the
know. I'm
same
just saying
fucking
that like
spear.
there's such a huge data fingerprint from the hardware device that he used to
Yeah.
create that first video that the second video would point right back at him. And then obviously there's like location telemetry that points to the same device and same person. It's like the idea that people can get away from the technology that we've created to track everything now. That's what I mean about useless data and useless telemetry. Some of it's useful, but a lot of it just seems to be like a waste of time and space. I mean, like it's a virtual black hole of data at that point, right? It's just so much data, no one has time to sift through it. No one can tell if it's even really meaningful anymore. AI is just guessing about what to tell us that it thinks that we want to see. Google's asking me if I want to get an AI powered overview. How far away? If the internet can find this guy faster than police, I mean, how far away are we from pre-crime? Eventually, AI is gonna be like, "Hey, this idiot's is learning how to use a spear. They said they're gonna go throw a spear at a car. Dispatch some law enforcement robots."
I
So,
mean, I don't think we're far. I think we've passed the pre-crime in terms of like, it's the issue is, does the state allow it or not? In terms of, I know there's got to be people out there that think that they can predict that shit and probably have some degree of success. in terms of like if they have capacity to analyze someone's DNA and their upbringing and get enough information, yeah, they could give a good enough estimate on the frequency and types of crimes a person or acts, if they're not all criminal, that this person would be committing.
Yeah. Well, FBI, they arrest people before they commit the crime because they collect all the evidence that they were about to commit the crime.
Right, but this is where entrapment laws have been changed.
Yeah.
To allow that type of shit. So that's, you can entrap people now, and then, yeah. It's like, is it a brown person who looks like a terrorist? Yeah, we can entrap them.
Oh, man. Man, just add that to the list of other things that we can talk about. It's like, man, when we were young, we used to be able to do all these things. Now they can entrap us. Fuck.
Exceptional Radio.
Exceptional Randos shows produced live in Sunroom Studios' Base Capsule. Remember to catch our Exceptional Randos live stream on YouTube every Sunday between 2 and 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you have a story, idea, or question that you would like to share, we want to hear from you. Thanks for listening.
Well, that was random. Exceptional Radio.